All right. Let's see. Today we are August 4th, I believe, if I remember correctly, 2021. And I have started the recording. Thank you, Robert and Sully, for coming by and logging in early. Probably see some folks logging in throughout the next 5 to 10 minutes. But I did kind of want to get started. There is only 16 slides today, so it'll be kind of a short presentation. Some of you might be happy about that. Just because these are not technical trainings, these are more tactical, understanding competition. This actually was my very first presentation that I put together. So it is short. I did add a few slides today, just kind of looking at it and trying to get the true concept of, what I'm trying to get across. So I think, Robert Sully, that you guys have seen this before. So there's some new material on it. So it should be pretty good. So we're on 6 o'clock right now. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And the folks that log in late, I guess will miss out. Okay. So I am recording it. So I think some folks, I've noticed that our visitorship has gone down a bit, and it may be because I'm recording them now, and at some point they'll get to watch it at their leisure, which is fine. So just want to get through it to fill the guff, if you will, on the YouTube channel that I'll give you guys after I get like maybe 10 presentations on the board there on YouTube. So let's get started. Good to see you guys. So understanding competition, there's my information. You guys know my info. As always, if you guys would mute on your end, and I think you guys are muted right now, just to avoid background noise, just don't want to hear the babies and trucks and dogs and stuff in the background. Kind of creates a distraction. So I do mute you on my end, but if you guys happen to chime in for whatever reason, just make sure you hit your mute button after you're done, okay? Ask questions in the chat room if you can. I try to get to the questions. I try to get to the questions after every slide, but you guys are welcome to chime in anytime. I do enjoy more of a dialogue versus a monologue. I don't like sitting here just talking to the computer screen. Makes me feel like I'm by myself, right? So feel free to chime in, okay? And thank you guys for logging in early. I do appreciate that. Meetings are open to anybody. And talking about background noise, there's some sirens. Licensed or not, doesn't matter. Young, old, doesn't matter. This information sometimes overflows to other businesses and industries, what have you. Just trying to share good information, be optimistic about anyone's project and or goals. And so I thank you guys for coming, okay? So let's get started. The definition of competition, right? The activity or condition of competing. So there is a fierce competition between banks. And so there's an example of the definition of the activity or condition of competing. Within itself really doesn't mean much, but an event or a contest in which people compete. Competitions, a beauty competition, right? So I think most of us know what competition means. Sometimes could mean a battle, right? Person or people with whom one is competing, especially in a commercial or sporting arena, the opposition. I walked around to check out the competition, right? So sometimes when I say battle, I mean, it's almost like you're trying to win something, right? In our case, it's profiting. And yeah, there is competition out there as real estate agents. Is there a possibility that, as a real estate agent, you could get more listings than other of your comrades and or colleagues at your office or other offices? Yeah, of course. So they become your competition, right? Interaction between organisms, populations, or species in which birth, growth, and death depend death, excuse me, depend on gaining a share of limited environmental resource. So that is kind of the definition that we're using here in real estate, right? We are literally an organism, right, that is gaining a share in a limited environmental resource. And that is, there's a limited amount of homes, even though there's a lot of them, right? And that's why we need a lot of real estate agents. So it kind of gives us purpose, right? Gives us purpose in what it is that we do. And that's one of the reasons why I do this training. Technically speaking, is because we want to do it well as well. We don't want to just compete with others, but once we do get something, a buyer or a listing, or possibly even property management or a lease, whatever it is involved in, is that you want to be able to do it well and consult your clients properly, because what we're after is those referrals, right? So here's just a quick saying: a flower does not think of competing to the flower next to it. It just blooms, right? So yeah, we have colleagues and comrades and, our brokers and even affiliates like title companies, escrow companies, inspection, termite, the list goes on. These people can also flourish, right? And the representation here is a flower, right? And they're not necessarily our competition, but they are sometimes competing themselves, right? So there is that component, if you will, in terms of competition, but at the end of the day, we can remain civil. And I think that's the reason for this saying, right? The reason why I put it up, right? So purpose of knowing who or what your competition is, okay? And this is kind of important because sometimes we can be misguided, right? So here's kind of a visual as to who or what that is, right? Realize what are your biggest obstacles, right? So when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about you personally, right? You need to realize what your biggest obstacle is. Observe successful behavior to build and hone your own. So, you see somebody that's doing well in something and is succeeding at something, you can mimic what it is that they're doing, not copy it necessarily, but mimic it, okay? And hone it to your own personality, your own liking, your own style, right? Realize what is possible in your selected career. So, there are those wow moments when you're sitting there and you go, oh, you know what? I didn't know we could do that, right? So those are those wow moments. Realize what is possible in what it is that you chose to do. And some of you have come across it's a list of 35 ways on how to get listings, right? Now, anybody reading that, I certainly don't want you guys doing all of those, okay? But what you could do is pick one or two of them and focus on them, right? So realizing what is possible in your selected career, right? It has a lot to do with you first. You have to decide what you want to do. Then that's your opportunity to focus on it, right? Disregard unwanted behaviors and activities. So on that same list, you're gonna pick one or two of those things, but there's gonna be 33 or 30 of them that you don't like or want to do, right? And and that's your personality, that's your style, right? I certainly don't want you guys to do what I'm doing, because you may not necessarily like what I'm doing or even want to do what I'm doing. And I'll be honest with you, in 32 years of being in the real estate industry, I have yet to meet two people that are just really alike. Everybody has their own styles. Everybody has their own method of dress, their own method of talking, their own method of doing whatever it is that they do. But we must disregard unwanted behaviors and activities, right? And what I mean by that is just don't act that way, right? You don't like something, don't act that way. Ability to realize new and possible heights in your career. So what does that mean? Well, you can look at some successful people that have been doing it maybe for a while, and they've been successful at doing something, and you can realize those heights. It's like, wow, I never knew that I could do that, right? So we're back to that wow factor, right? build necessary knowledge associated with your service. So you pick a few of those things off the list and you start to build your knowledge on it. You know, I'll be honest with you, anything that I've ever started to work on, I never really stopped building my knowledge. It never stopped. You pretty much are reading either daily or weekly. And I always recommend, you know, short little segments, like half hour, 45-minute segments. Don't spend 3 hours reading something. I'll be honest with you, in my experience, you don't retain it as well. But if you're doing like 20, 30 minutes a day on a subject matter, and you keep just building and building and building, and maybe during your reading process, right? During the time that you're reading, you're also putting together other stuff that has to do with that, right? At some point, you're going to have a pretty good amount of information, right? And knowledge. I mean, ultimately, that's the purpose of this line here: build necessary knowledge associated with your service. The knowledge goes along with creating the tools that you need as well. Set goals, both short-term and long-term. And this is important just in anything. It doesn't matter what it is. You probably heard this in school. You probably heard this, you know, if you were on any kind of sports teams, you probably heard this just from your parents. You know, set goals. You know, this is important because what it does is it gives you a vision as to where you're headed and what you want to do. And ultimately, what it does is it makes you try harder. You don't realize that until you've actually done it. It's like, wow, you know, I tried so hard to get here, right? But the reason why you tried so hard is because you had a goal. So if you don't set yourself a goal, you're not going to try, right? Or you know, I'm speculating, but at the end of the day, it's just human behavior, right? So any questions or comments on that slide? It's kind of like a breakdown, if you will, of you know, who or what is your competition, and so far, you know, I haven't really said anything about the opposing agents. The competition in this slide is primarily yourself, right? Realize your obstacles, observe successful behaviors, realize what's possible, disregard what you don't want to do, ability to realize new and possible heights, you know, build necessary knowledge and set goals. That all has to do with you as a person, right? And so that's what this slide is about. Haven't really said anything about again, opposing offices, you know, the people that are possibly going after the same listing that you are. You know, those are real competition, but ultimately, what's going to win them over? These kind of behaviors, these kind of insights. Okay, let's keep moving, right? We tend to look at competition various ways, right? As male or female, as they drive or what they drive, right? So, oh wow, that guy drives a Lamborghini, right? Or drives a Porsche, right? So now we're making judgment calls, right? What they wear, so you know how they dress, where they shop. You know, they shop at the Five and Dime, or they shop at Macy's, right? How they look, how they sound. You know, I've heard people's accents being made fun of sometimes. So again, we're making judgment calls. Who they work for or with, and so you know, yeah, they're making judgment calls. Oh, you work for like a little boutique real estate agent versus Berkshire Hathaway, right, which is a big name, right? How much they make, how long they've been in the business. So I heard that one all the time. Oh, I've been in the business 25 years, and you know, I've never seen or heard that before. I mean, they're pretty much calling you stupid, right? But again, it's a judgment call, right? I don't like to tell them that, well, I've been in the business 32 years, but that doesn't make me any smarter than you. Their ability to interpret information and facilitate. Right? Again, it's a judgment call, right? We're making those judgments. And then again, what they do, right? So the graph below, although general and without labels, demonstrates different perceptions based on color. So what I did here was I took each color and I'm generating different perceptions. So if you look at category 1, the green one is up at 4, well, yellow's at 2 and blue's just under 2, right? But if you look at category 4, right, the blue is almost up at 5 and the green is pretty much almost the same. And then blue is almost the same. I'm sorry, yellow is almost the same, right? But category 2 and 3 are a little different. My point is that in this particular slide, okay, my point is that if you look at the different judgments that we're making on folks, okay, whether what they drive, whether they're a guy or girl, or how much they make, or whatever the case is, you're going to find in those same categories, and let's just say how they sound happens to be blue, okay? Well, that could work with you or against you. So how they sound, well, you might know somebody that has a really thick accent. Let's just say it's an Asian accent, okay? And sometimes you don't understand what they're saying, so you've already kind of made a judgment call, okay? But you might come across an Asian, and let's just say that how they sound is blue, right? In category 1, that person is on a low scale, but on category 4, they're on a high scale, right? So really, it has to do more with your perception and your judgment, right? In terms of them being your competition, because it may not necessarily be true that your judgment of them being low on the category, which in this case, how they sound, or blue, right? It may not be correct. You may have been taken into a belief, if you will, that that person really isn't competition, when they may very well be, just because of how they sound. So the idea is really not to make judgment calls on others. And here's 10 examples as to why you wouldn't, right? Or these are 10 examples as to what to look out for. You know, don't make a judgment call because they're male or female. Don't make a judgment call of what they drive or how they sound. They potentially will always be competition, right? And you could potentially use that to your advantage, yes, okay. But the idea is that not to make that judgment call. And we're talking about your potential competition. You know, this is understanding competition. Any questions or comments on that? So that said, right? So here we are making judgment calls. So in order to visualize our competition, we must first define a success, right? So when you are looking at these different levels, right? What does success mean to you, right? Is 2 closings good enough for you, or 25 closings good enough for you, right? So now your perception has been kind of defined, if you will, whereas to somebody else that you potentially made a judgment call on, right? Their level of success may be different than yours, and hence now your judgment call may be also incorrect. There is a cognitive distortion that we've talked about before. It's called overgeneralization, right? Or global labeling, that kind of falls into play here, okay? In order to visualize our competition, we must first define a success. So here is a graph defining some different successes, right? And the different levels of success can exist depending on the career choice. So yeah, some people might say, oh, you know what, I'm going to do investment properties, and other people are going to do, I'm going to do commercial, and other people are going to say, I'm going to do $1 million homes. Well, on level 3, right, when you have 2 closings for the agents or 5 closings for the affiliates, right? If they're $1 million deals and they're making, let's say, $150,000 commissions, right? That may be about the same as level 2 with 25 closings, right? For those agents. So if it's the same, their level of success is actually the same. So again, we can't necessarily make those judgment calls based on their closings or based on their career choice, right? Your level of success determines whom is your real competition. So if you find that you are in a market where you kind of see maybe some other agents doing kind of the same stuff you're doing, yeah, they become your competition, right? and maybe they've kind of fallen into your idea of your level of success. So now you've kind of determined, oh yeah, you know what, that particular agent, or there's a couple different agents or affiliates that are my competition, right? Your target market can predetermine your perceived success versus your actual success, right? So now you've determined who potentially your competition is and what your success level could be or should be, because now you've kind of made it your goal, right? And if you focus on it and you act on it, right, it potentially can become your actual success. So your perceived success, because you've kind of been, I don't know, researching it, if you will. You know, you're talking to people, you're looking at advertisements, you're researching, right? It becomes, you get this idea like, oh, you know what, I could probably do like 7 or 8, 9 closings a year. You know, that would be pretty good for me. So that's your perceived success. Now it kind of becomes a goal, and then potentially you could make it your actual success simply just by acting on it. So using competition helps you get there. The size of the group you belong to can exude perceived success. So if you're in a smaller group, right? Let's say you're in a team of 3 people, right? Those 3 people have a certain perceived success. But if you're in a larger group, that perceived success can potentially be more because of the numbers. So if you're in a group of 20, you potentially can get more done, right? And your perceived success is a little bit larger than it would be if you're in a smaller group. So that's something that, you know, you just need to decide at some point whether or not you want to be part of a larger group. You know, some of us have lived or worked in the corporate world, which is a larger group. I at one point worked on the floor of 90 review appraisers. So that was a large group. We did the whole country, and the perceived success of our floor was pretty high from the higher ups. Any questions or comments on that? Let's do a quick funny. Okay, so funny and competition. Okay, winning at friendly competition. So here you have a honey sliced ham right next door to Healthy Weight Supermarket, and I thought that was kind of funny. So your worst enemy, you are your worst enemy. It is your negative thoughts that hold you back. Mainly, it is important to behave diplomatically by focusing on the positive side of things. Optimism is required to make any kind of progress or change. In my never to be humble opinion, of course. So, you know, this just has to do with being positive, right? And when I talk about understanding competition, again, I have talked a little bit about colleagues and comrades or other offices, but for the majority of the presentation, I have literally talked about things that we are doing for ourselves. And that's because there is, you know, when we're in our everyday routines, it becomes a matter of complacency, and that's what's coming up next. Okay, so we become our own worst enemy, and it's because we are not driving ourselves or trying harder to do things or working the longer hours, knowing that there's stuff that we can do actually to perceive, number one, the success, and then to actualize it, meaning that for it to actually become true. Okay, so let's start on complacency. Oh, and I forgot to animate that bottom part, right? So you got a little nugget. I'll have to change that for the next one. So definition of complacency, okay? Self-satisfaction, especially when accompanied by unawareness or actual dangers or deficiencies. And I wonder why that's cut off at the end. No idea. A feeling of calm satisfaction with your own abilities or situation that prevents you from trying harder. So that's important. So, you know, I had to mix these two definitions together because they say kind of the same thing, but two different things. Okay. When you find yourself kind of self-satisfied, you know, that's kind of why I put that little triangle up at the top there. You're in your comfort zone. You know, that's when we find ourselves, you know, relaxing, knowing that there's things that need to get done, knowing that there's things that we're kind of procrastinating on, but we're just not doing it. So what's holding us back? Well, what's holding us back from trying harder? Well, it's us. We're doing it to ourselves, right? So here's an example. So we spoke about this in qualities of a good manager presentation. I don't know if you guys remember that presentation. I probably did it probably closer to about a year ago. I'll probably be doing it here soon again. But I always love that presentation because it reminds me pretty much on a daily the things that cause me to work harder, cause me to do things more often, cause me to push harder and you know, do the things that I'm talking about, create goals, right? Do research. Okay, so I know it's just you guys, Robert and Sully, but does anyone know how to train an elephant? And I think the example that I gave before was how to train a flea, which is a little bit different. But do you guys remember how to train an elephant? Well, the way that a trainer trains an elephant is they actually cause the elephant to become complacent. So here's the explanation. So they do this by tying a chain to its leg and anchoring it at an early age. As the elephant grows with the shackle on its leg, it begins to believe that it can't go farther than the chain. The trainer at some point removes the anchor. The elephant unknowingly won't go anywhere much farther because it believes that it is anchored. And this happens to all of us. It's called complacency, right? And we don't, sometimes we don't realize what's happening, right? But if we look at this slide and we really think about it, there are things in our lives that we have found are like our ball and chain. It has caused us to be complacent, right? A feeling of calm satisfaction with your own abilities or situation that prevents you from trying harder. And it's really just your mind. It's just you telling yourself, your messaging system in your head, you know, your inner voice is telling you, I don't feel like doing it. I know I got stuff to do, but I just don't want to. That's complacency. Happens to all of us. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. There's absolutely not one person that can get away from it, but what you can do is control it. Whereas you choose the times that you're going to have downtime, and you choose the times when you're going to try harder, when you know that there's stuff that needs to get done, right? Any questions or comments on that one? So this is the new material that I put in just today. So how to combat complacency, right? So there's actually 5 different ways that I had researched and I liked. So these are the things that that I had put in here on my research, right? So we remove obstacles, right? The quickest route to complacency. Combine a repetitive and boring task list with frustrating obstacles to get the task done. Provide them with tools and supports they need to get the job done. Use your open door policy and solicit feedback from them regularly so you can anticipate obstacles before they breed disengaged and complacent behavior. Now, understand that when I was doing the research, this is like talking, like if you're doing this for someone, right? You still need to think about it like if you're doing it for yourself, okay? So, so the quickest route to complacency is, is to create boring tasks, just you're doing those tasks, frustrating obstacles, right? So you just need to get yourself the tools and support to get the job done, right? And try not to engage in those complacent behaviors that they're talking about, like where you're disengaged, right? You're not trying hard. Those behaviors we don't want to go into, and that has a little bit to do with, I think, the second slide when we talked about disregarding those behaviors, right? So create meaning. So fight complacency, encourage investment, and make the work meaningful by showing all of them how to fit into the big picture. So part of that, so I'm going to stop there for a second. Part of that has to do with the fact that what you're doing is important to the community, right? Real estate agents exist because they are important to the community. If they weren't, they would not exist. That's just a true statement, okay? Tune frontline folks into the strategic goals of the organization. And when I say frontline, those are the people that are usually out there door knocking and that kind of thing. Share the impact of what you do and celebrate accomplishments with all of them. Illustrate the larger purpose of the work and the why behind what they're doing to create significance and engagement, right? So it's about knowing that what you're doing is important. What you're doing, you're not just studying the technical version of real estate because it's not important. It's important, and when you get into the tactical part, or the part where you're getting business and you're making money, well, that's the reward. That's the reward of doing all of that, right? So there is meaning behind what it is that you're doing. So understand that with that meaning, right, it should inhibit you to try harder. Hence the opposite of complacency, right? Empower and challenge. An empowered agent is rarely a complacent one. So, a lot of us know, those agents that are just always kind of popping, and they're just always, they're always energetic, and they're always, moving, and they're always, him and ha, right? And that is an empowered agent. Well, those people are rarely complacent. And if they are feeling complacent, they're certainly not playing on it or acting on it, right? You work with a team of grown-ups, so treat them that way and articulate the expected results, and then step away. Grant team members the autonomy to do their jobs in a way that works for them, and allow them to take ownership of their areas of accountability. Provided the desired results are there, do you really need to micromanage the how, right? So if you find yourself doing well in something, you don't necessarily need to micromanage it. But again, remember, this is you're talking like in the second person, okay? Empowering your team means they will feel challenged, trusted, and supported in developing new skills, right? In essence, what it's saying is that allow yourself to be an individual. You are who you are. You don't necessarily, oh yeah, you're going to take a look at what your competition is doing, but you might have your own ideas. And empower yourselves with your ideas. Your ideas are good. If you're making that logical connection in your mind, then there's no reason why it's not a good idea, right? And if it's working well, then keep doing it. That's the idea, right? The empowering and challenging part is simply just kind of psyching yourself out. You're psyching yourself out to have a good day. You're psyching yourself out that you're going to meet your goals. Hey, I'm going to talk to 20 people today, right? And you're going to do it until you're done. And you're going to try hard doing it, right? So what have I just done? I've empowered myself, and I've challenged myself. I've challenged myself. Well, this is what I'm going to do. I did 18 yesterday. I'm going to do 20 today, right? That is number 3 of the 5. Any questions or comments on those? So show yourself a path, right? When an agent doesn't see a future, complacency can be the natural consequence. If you want top performers to stick around, don't make them guess at their future with the organization. Spell it out and highlight what their career path with your organization could look like to keep them invested in the day-to-day. Now, when we talk about organization, let's think about that as like a team, right? Everybody in a real estate office, whether they're agents or not, is part of your team. And it's because, if you think about it, some of the bigger companies, you know, when they, let's say they work for Berkshire Hathaway. Well, there's one in Torrance and there's one in Rancho Cucamonga. You know, we're talking about 40 miles difference in those two offices. But if they're both the same, right? Think of it like kind of like being like McDonald's, right? If you go to the McDonald's in Arizona, it's gonna be the same as the one in Nevada, right? You're gonna have the same menu, you're gonna have the same stuff. So the idea is that now you kind of duplicated yourself, right? So if you find yourself part of a team, kind of like those larger companies, right? You can start to see a little bit of a future because, you know, hey, there's a foundation, there's an infrastructure, and there is you know, the all of the components that create that organization. Okay, so you should be able to visualize or see the light at the end of the tunnel. You should be able to visualize your future, right? If you can't see what your future looks like, right, it is very common to become complacent, like, oh, you know what, I really don't feel like trying anymore because I don't see the benefit in this, right? That is how one becomes complacent. So if you can see the path in front of you and you can see where the goal or the light at the end of the tunnel could be, you get away from complacency. You get away from you know, not trying or being lazy, right? You actually try harder. So showing yourself a path, seeing into the future is important in how to combat complacency. And then finally, celebrate. Give yourself something to look forward to. Having things on the horizon to get excited about can make a big difference to how engaged agents feel. Break up monotony and encourage team bonding by holding regular mini celebrations, team accomplishments, birthdays, holidays. So pick a time and make it happen. Celebration doesn't have to be big or expensive, but it gives everyone a bright spot to focus on and talk about. And you know, I see a lot of offices doing that. It's a good thing. You know, it's always good to have a social hour. It's always good to have that recognition, if you will, that hey, you know what, we're all human. You know, we're not all just about work, and everything that we've been talking about thus far. You know, it's a bit like robot, right? We need to have some human aspects involved in what it is that we're doing, and celebrating is one of those human aspects, right? Letting your hair down, so to speak. You know, you're not as professional anymore. You know, you're kind of telling jokes and maybe have a margarita or something, right? Even good food, right, could be a release, right? But it's that celebration / recognition that, you know, we need to give ourselves to get away from that complacency. What it does is it helps us recognize that other people are succeeding in what they're doing, and it actually causes us to work a little harder. It causes us to work a little bit harder in terms of everything that we spoke about, right? And there's Mr. Larry, even though we're almost done. So anyway, any questions or comments on that slide? All right. So this actually is now, so we've talked about complacency, okay, and the different ways of how we can combat it. But this is a tool now, right? So you may want to take a picture of this when it's all up. This is a tool that I use, right, in any given situation, right? It's an improvise, overcome, and adapt. And believe it or not, I saw this in a movie. It was like a war movie with, oh man, I can't think of his name at the moment. But he was the sergeant of this like platoon, and this is how he was teaching his platoon on what to do in any given situation in combat. Well, when I started to research this a little more, I saw that it actually could plug into any situation, especially when it comes to competition, right? because in combat, you are competing against somebody, right? So that's how it applies. So improvise, overcome, and adapt, right? So one must improvise your own activities and attitudes in order to rise to the challenge of competition. So meaning that, and let's just say that we are, I don't know, let's say we're playing a game of basketball, right? You may, may not be ready for the game, but how does one get ready for a game? Well, you stretch, right? Maybe you warm up. Maybe you're doing some different exercises. You're pumping yourself up, right? Kind of like how a boxer does. They're going really fast and they're just warming up. They're getting their heart pumping. Well, that's improvisation, right? They're getting ready for the challenge, right? So one must improvise your own activities and attitudes in order to rise to the challenge or competition. Well, we could do the same thing at our desk. What are we doing? Well, we're researching. We're building our knowledge. We are finding things out. We're talking to people, right? So we're rising to the occasion, right? Research and learn your competition strengths and weaknesses, allowing improvisation. So, let's talk about the boxer. First he's warming up, he's doing all that stuff. Well, in round one, I don't know if you notice, in a boxing match, usually each of the opponents they're testing their opponent. And actually what they're doing is they're researching. What are their weaknesses? What are their strengths? Oh, this guy kicks really hard. I got to stay away from that leg. Oh, you know what? He gave me a body blow, but there wasn't much in it. So these are strengths and weaknesses, right? What you're doing is you are researching those things, right? And you might find strengths and weaknesses in the market. You're not necessarily looking for that in your competition in terms of agents. You're looking for that possibly in the market. So overcome your own fears and dislikes with practice and ingenuity. The fact that you overcome something means you are simply now doing it freely. So so most of us, and I remember when I first got my license, I was a little afraid to go out there and talk to people, mainly because I didn't know what I was talking about. Yeah, I knew everything in the back office corporate world because that's where I was for 20 years. But when I came out into the private sector, it was difficult to get past that fear, if you will, of talking to people. Now, eventually I was able to do it because I pushed myself, right? But I overcame it, right? Because at some point I was simply doing it freely. So that fear no longer was controlling my behavior. So I've overcome that fear. And then adapt. Over time, over time, the discovered behaviors associated with overcoming the accomplishing your current goals, ultimately rising to the occasion with change. And that's literally just what adapt means, is that at some point you have simply just changed. You've improvised, risen to the occasion, you've overcome, you've changed the behaviors, and now you've adapted, meaning that now you've become that person that you were trying to be, what you were trying to do. And it all ties in together. And that's why I put this little gear thing up here on the side, right? In terms of improvise, overcome, and adapt. 3 very powerful words that I use pretty much on a daily. If you guys would like to take a picture of that, was a good time. But that is some strong stuff. I still can't remember the name of that actor, but he's a little skinny dude. He just made a movie. What was it? El Camino? Was it El Camino? No, it wasn't El Camino. He made a movie about a car, but you know what? He was in The Mule. You guys remember who the actor was in The Mule? He was in this. I'm talking about maybe 30 years ago. This movie came out, and it was probably like a B-rated movie. But I don't know, for some reason his name eludes me. But I love his acting. He was the guy that he would do. You Philly Lucky Punk, right? I don't know why I can't think of his name, but it's driving me crazy, and it's going to bug me, so I'm going to have to look it up now. So here we are on final thoughts. Okay, we're on slide 14. In the end, there's no limit to our possibilities other than what we create for ourselves in our minds. Ultimately, we are our own competition. Our exterior influences serve only to remind us of our surroundings. If we evolve by improvising, overcoming, and adapting to our environment, we can only be limited by our resources and the ability to harness our energy. The ability to accelerate those resources is not limited, but instead endless in the mindset of imagination. Your ability to understand this becomes your position in a competitive world. So it goes back to the whole competitive part, okay? Is that if we simply understand that being in a competition is simply, and what are we talking about? We're talking about real estate, right? We're talking about real estate. That those individuals, our competition, have the same challenges that you do. And there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't do, if you happen to see somebody who's successful in something, there's no reason why you couldn't do exactly the same or better. It's simply limited to your imagination. That's the reason why I said that. And your ability to understand that, simply just being aware of that, right? It will either make you try harder or try less, because some of us become complacent, right? But the idea is to work the opposite of complacent and just try harder. That's the whole idea. So any questions or comments on that? All right, so we're really good on time, 6:46. We're on slide 15, affiliates and resources. There's my information. There's Mr. Larry, who happened to chime in a few minutes ago. How you doing, Mr. Larry? There's his information, as we usually, Larry has been an avid watcher of the presentations and supporter. And there's Miss Liz. She does mortgages with the RES Mortgage. If you need an approval or have a question about a loan or anything like that, she can help you with those things. And then there's Mr. Dave. He does his Saturday meetings. He's a real estate trainer and coach. He does charge for his services. And he does his weekly thing, but the Saturday stuff, which that's the meeting ID and password you're seeing here, is free for that hour and a half that he does. Good stuff, motivational. He knows what he's talking about. He's been doing it for probably as long as me. He's been out there bumping and grinding, you know, in terms of helping agents get business. So let's see, what day you want to go for lunch? Well, actually, I'm actually taking off on a little staycation Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I don't know, maybe next week, you guys give me a call and we'll set something up. You know, give me a couple of days in advance. You know, let me know what you guys like. Love to sit and talk with you guys and talk about the old times. Remember the Buena Park, we were talking about that today, as a matter of fact, the Buena Park broker preview. Remember that? We were kind of laughing about it. You know, I was talking to Richard and we were kind of laughing about it because, you know what, quite frankly, I don't really remember too much of what we did there. I mean, I know, as a matter of fact, that's where I met Dave. I think that's where I met you guys. We did that for a couple of years, and wow, it was kind of surprising. And then finally, Shameen, she was actually in my office yesterday. She does NHD. I always recommend Property ID for NHD, mainly because they have a new way of delivering their resources, which are primarily links, which, you know, get you out now into the internet. But they also have errors and omissions insurance up to $1 million. So that is good for the brokers. So that's the reason why Shameen now is a supporter of the show here. So anyway, that said, guys, thank you for coming. I was able to record this one today, which would probably end up being like an hour. There's my information. Next week, and because there's only one of us here, I'll choose what we do for next week. It'll probably also be a tactical training versus technical. I don't want to get into the technical stuff until maybe September again. We'll start doing the RPA, the listing agreement, that kind of stuff. And for whatever reason, my registration numbers keep going up. We're at 72 now, but there's very few viewership. And I'm thinking it might be because I'm starting to record them, which is okay. At some point, we'll start, people can binge watch the presentations. Maybe you can see 3 or 4 of these in a week, right? If it's helpful. Not only that, but you get to pick and choose what you want to see. So that's kind of a good thing too. So anyway, that said, be sure to invite folks too. If you guys know somebody that's interested in learning about real estate, this is where they can do it. We talk about it. Today's presentation, like I mentioned before, this is the very first one that I've ever done on PowerPoint. I did, do some updating to it and adding some things, but for the most part, it's very conceptual. You think about what we're up against in the real world, and it's simply just competition. But believe it or not, your worst competition is you. Look in the mirror and tell yourself, hey man, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try hard, and I'm going to work longer, and and you know what, your body can take it. I've done it for years. Your body can take it. Sometimes, hey, don't push yourself too hard. You want to eat right, you want to do that kind of stuff. But for the most part, your competition is you. You are your own worst enemy. We become complacent. We become shy. We become, unknowledged and things like that. And those are all things that can be cured. We can improvise, overcome, and adapt to being better, right? Improvise, overcome, and adapt. That's why those 3 words were important, because we can become better. We can try harder and become better. And that's what ultimately what competition is all about. If you become better than your competition, guess what? You are better now at what it is that you're doing, whatever your goal was. So that was the purpose of having this competition presentation. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next week on Wednesday, unless you guys have a question or comment, or you just want to chat. We are at 6:51, so we're still good on time. But for the most part, low viewership today. Now, there was a few folks that told me they weren't able to make it today. So for whatever reason, things, it's summertime, people are on vacation, and there's some other folks that had some things to do. But there are some folks that, sometimes they come into my office and they start asking me questions, and I tell them, hey, you know what? You come out on every Wednesday at 6 o'clock, we'll be discussing that information. And ultimately, it's because, you know what? It's not that I want to help you guys. I do. But it becomes a waste of time for me if I'm doing it one person at a time. If I'm doing it 10 or 15 at a time, right? Especially with recording it, it becomes a lot easier for me because it takes less time off my plate. So I hope you guys understand that. So ultimately, is the reason why I started these presentations, and also the reason why I'm starting to record them and putting them on YouTube, because I really do want to help whoever is interested in receiving it. Anybody who's interested in receiving the help, it's right there at your fingertips. And to be totally frank, I've been in a lot of different offices, different brokerages over the years, even as a guest, and I rarely see this type of training. The training that I mostly see is like what I call rah-rah, and it's ultimately just cheerleading, right? They're trying to motivate you to go out there and get business, right? This is kind of that in a way, but it conceptualizes it. We talked about complacency. We talked about the different things that we make judgment calls on. We talked about improvising, overcoming, and adapting, right? It's not about just here, go out and get business, do the best you can. No, it's oversimplified in my book anyway. So this is the reason why I wanted to do this presentation. It was the first one that came to mind. I actually got exposed to this, believe it or not, when I was working at Cragen in Rancho Cucamonga. My district manager sent me to an assessment center, and they brought competition up and they conceptualized it. So some of what you see here, it has to do with that, but you can plug it in really to any industry, right? There's competition pretty much anywhere, but I'll say it again. The competition is you. You become the competition, because if you're not doing something, if you're being lazy, if you're not trying hard, if you're not researching, right, you become your own worst enemy. You actually are now winning the game for the people that you are trying to compete against. So if you're trying to get a listing, say, right, you're just not getting up, and you're not marketing yourself, you're not talking to people. Guess what? Someone else is going to pick it up. Know that to be true. Someone else is going to pick it up if you don't try harder and research what it is that you want to do, and research what it is that your career choice. So enough said. You guys have anything you want to say, or are we done for the day? Coming up on 6:55. Okay. Well, hey guys, it was good presenting today, and I hope you guys enjoyed it again. And we'll see you guys next week. I'll choose what we do for next week. I've got 4 or 5 different ones that we could do. I think I might do the sell, if I remember correctly. I think we might do that one. That's one that I would like to get out there, and that's one that I really enjoyed as well. So I enjoyed making it, and I enjoyed talking about it. So that said, guys, you guys have a nice evening, and I'm going to sign off. Okay.
Good, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again.
Sorry for being late.
Oh, no problem. No problem.